Hey everyone, the indie board game studio Hyber is kickstarting a brand new app-driven social deduction game called Houston, We Have a Dolphin, and emailed me asking if I would do a preview video for it. I was charmed by the theme of dolphins trying to sabotage a spaceship, and I'm a big fan of social deduction games, so I immediately told them I'd love to do the video. They sent me a copy of the game, but when I sat down to start learning the rules, I noticed something that made my heart sink to my stomach. This is a game for 3 to 5 players. Now, at the time I'm filming this, the world is in the middle of a pandemic, battling a devastating virus called COVID-19. Because of this, everyone is required to socially distance and stay home as much as possible to help stop the disease from spreading. Since I live alone and inviting other people over could potentially be deadly, I realized I had no idea how I was going to play a game designed for multiple players who would all have different hidden roles. I had already promised Hyber I would preview their game, and since I didn't want the potential failure of their Kickstarter to rest on my shoulders, I decided that I was just going to have to figure out how to play it on my own with myself playing every role. To do this, my first thought was to try and develop a multiple personality disorder, and after doing some research, I found that it's usually caused by severe trauma during early childhood. So I tried real hard to get into the mindset of myself as a toddler, and then called my dad and had him yell at me for a few hours.
Jeffrey, you are a bad boy. You're a really bad boy. No one's gonna ever love you because you're a bad boy, Jeffrey. You're really bad every single day.
Unfortunately, it didn't work. My smart brain could see right through the ruse, and despite the yelling, I could tell that my dad did in fact really love me, which was a huge letdown. By this time, the deadline for posting my video was drawing near, and I knew I was going to have to resort to drastic measures. For this game, the main problem of playing every role on my own is that I would immediately know which versions of myself were astronauts and which were evil dolphins, removing all elements of deduction from my playthroughs. It was going to be a lot of work, but in order to allow myself to make unbiased choices, I decided that my best course of action was to play 50 simultaneous games and overwhelm my brain with sheer volume. First, I numbered each card so I'd be able to keep track of them without having to reveal them. Then, I used the Houston We Have a Dolphin app to scan each card and deal out hands for 5 players. Next, using the card numbers, I entered all the hands into a spreadsheet so my future self would be able to accurately recreate the game. After that, I gathered up all the cards and repeated this entire process 49 more times, creating 50 in-progress games. Once I inputted the 50th game's data, I checked my spreadsheet and redealt the cards the way they were for game number 1. Next, it was time to assign myself my roles. In this game, players can be either a normal astronaut whose goal is to fix our spaceship, an evil dolphin trying to destroy the spaceship, or the captain, who decides which players get a chance at performing spaceship repairs. I picked up a hand, noted my role, considered all my potential choices and interactions, and then recorded a video of myself, saying what I would normally have said to other players.
I am just a normal astronaut, nothing special.
Afterwards, I did the same thing for one player in games 2 through 50, and then reset everything back to how it was for game 1. By this time, hours had passed, and I'd seen so many different combinations of cards that I had completely forgotten which role game 1's first player was, and I couldn't remember what I had said in that player's initial video. This allowed me to pick up a second player's hand and do the same thing for them without fear of my actions being tainted by my previous knowledge. I repeated this process over and over again, going game by game, player by player, and after 8 hours, I finally had first turn videos for all 250 versions of myself. Next, I took on the role of the Game 1 captain, watched the videos from the other players in that game, and then decided who would get the chance to fix the ship this turn. After, I did the same thing with the other 49 games captains. With these decisions made, I was able to one by one take on the role of the players chosen by the captains and pick which cards I would play from my hands. Once I recorded all this data in my spreadsheet, I could cross-reference the numbers, scan the chosen cards into the app, and see if the ship had been fixed or sabotaged for this turn. I began switching players, recording my reactions and responses to each outcome. I started using multiple recording devices, which meant I could hit play on all of them and simulate a live in-game argument, with each player struggling to get their point across over the sound of everyone else struggling to get their point across. Using this method, I was slowly able to gain more and more unbiased information about myself. In some games, the astronauts got closer to fixing the ship, while in others, the dolphins killed people, or I revolted against myself and picked myself as the new captain. However, as each game progressed, I found that many of my players were adopting similar strategies and logic patterns were beginning to emerge. It was happening so much that I started writing those choices down on post-it notes and assigning them numbers. Instead of going through the motion of having each player react to every single situation, I was now able to save time by just listing a number and cross-referencing the post-it note. As I wrote more and more notes, I began noticing even more patterns, where some notes were regularly being used as reactions to other notes. I was then able to further condense both of those into a single note. This kept happening over and over and over, and by the time I finished all 50 games, I was down to 4 post-it notes that encompassed every possible action, reaction, and outcome that I could logically make as every single player. Using these, I could now play a full, riveting game all by myself in a matter of seconds. I had done it. I had succeeded in my goal, which meant I could confidently and honestly preview the game while maintaining my integrity. So, without further ado, here is some actual preview gameplay footage of Houston, We Have a Dolphin. This is a game where the astronauts win. And this is one where the dolphins win. And this is another one where the dolphins win. So, there you have it. If you were previously unsure whether or not you should support Houston, We Have a Dolphin on Kickstarter, you now have all the information you can need to make your decision. After all that, I'm so glad Hyber reached out to me to do this preview video, and I'm incredibly thankful that game publishers continue to support me in my role as a trusted educator in the tabletop gaming community. You're welcome.